when he left the Army in 1954 after serving in the Korean War. He was living with his wife in Hong Kong, and he was about to return to the U.S. to pursue a pretty predictable career in his chosen field, psychiatry. Instead, he made a last-minute decision to stay in Hong Kong, and it changed everything. Since then, he spent a lifetime exploring the darkest chapters of the human experience. China's experiment with mind control, the victims of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, the veterans of the U.S. war in Vietnam, and the Nazi doctors who sent millions of Jews to the gas chambers. As his subjects changed, he changed. Less the detached psychiatrist, more the impassioned activist. Lifton is 85 years old now, and he re-examines his life's work in a new memoir. It's called Witness to an Extreme Century. Robert J. Lifton joins me now. Thanks very much for being on the show.
I'm pleased to be with you.
So you start the book talking about that decision to stay in Hong Kong. You wanted to stay to continue your work on Chinese mind control or thought reform. Describe what that work was and what about it captivated you so.
I came upon it first on returning American POWs, prisoners of war, but I came to realize that that had been a kind of export version, and the main use of thought reform was on the Chinese population. And it was practiced in special institutions, so-called revolutionary colleges, in regular universities, in places where people worked, in neighborhoods, all through any kind of association that people had. And in that sense, it penetrated the entire Chinese population. And I was impressed by the extent to which a country, a party, would carry a systematic effort at changing people.
This experience studying this topic in Hong Kong changed your career path. Talk a little bit about how things shifted for you after that.
Once I made that decision to stay, it led to a systematic research study, and that became the first of a number of studies that were idiosyncratic, outside the realm of conventional psychiatric or psychological work. And the emergence of my identity as a psychiatrist out in the world, doing studies that combined individual psychology and larger historical forces in various parts of the world, and especially dealing with highly destructive events.
You went on to study the effects of the atomic bomb on the residents of Hiroshima, Japan. And you say in the book that you don't remember where you were when you heard that the U.S. had dropped the bomb, but you do remember how you felt.
That's right. I was 19 years old when the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and then Nagasaki. And my first reaction, which I'm deeply ashamed of, but was all too frequent at that time, was a kind of joy that the bomb was dropped, the war would end, we would defeat the Japanese, and I wouldn't have to go and fight in the war. Within a few days, I modified that response because I learned more about what this bomb was. And I say that I spent a lifetime atoning for that first reaction, but it was my reaction.
Well, I was going to ask you, you talked to so many people in the course of this work. Was there one person's story that sticks with you even today?
There was one story I can mention, a professor of history whom I interviewed.